Hi there, Dr. Lema is my name, and welcome to Autism and Beyond. If you're new here, please go ahead and subscribe, and I hope you watch till the end of this video. So there's a term that has been thrown around. I've heard of it a couple of times, and that's what has been my inspiration of doing this video, and that's high-functioning autism. Number one, it's not a medical diagnosis. And number two, we used to call it Asperger's syndrome for those who have been on this journey for some time. But these days, we no longer refer it as high functioning or Asperger. We say a person is on the spectrum. So you either have autism or you don't. And with that diagnosis comes how much assistance do you need to be able to adopt into this typical world. And so we label them as level 1, level 2, and level 3. So those who are termed to be high functioning, quote unquote, are actually those who are on the spectrum, and they are at level 1. And most of these are able to actually live near normal lives, quote unquote. And you may not be able to actually even know unless they come forward and tell you that they are actually on the spectrum. So where did this term come from? So when we talk of high functioning, actually what it meant is in relation to intelligence based on IQ scores, okay? So a person is termed to be high functioning when their scores, IQ scores, they're actually at average or above average. Okay, and so you come to realize they are talking about high functioning autism in relation to intelligence, and yet autism is not primarily an intelligence issue. Okay, however, of course, there are those who are on the spectrum, and yes, they may have challenges in their intelligence, but those are very two different entities for you to be able to label someone as something like high functioning. Because when you say there's high functioning, what you actually also mean is that there are those who are low functioning. But the truth of the matter is, and this has been my biggest problem, we don't have tools to measure intelligence of those who are on the spectrum. When we talk of IQ, we are only talking about whatever tools that have been designed to measure intelligence in a typical brain. Okay, so the fact we don't have tools to measure intelligence of a brain that is on the spectrum, then I don't think if we have weight to actually label someone as high function or low function based on a test score was never designed for them. So now when it comes to a person who is level 1, these are the people who are mostly judged, unfortunately, by the people around them. Okay, because this will not present with the typical symptoms of autism as we know it. They will not be spinning, they will not be covering their ears, they will not be constantly fidgeting. These are people who will walk into a room and they just look like me and you who are typical. Okay, and so as a result, the expectations are attached to how this person should behave, how this person should communicate, how this person should interact with me, but unless this person comes out and tell you, actually, I'm on the spectrum, you'll just be judging them harshly without knowing actually what is happening in this person's brain. There's another study I read that about, they were comparing the resting brain between a neurotypical person and a resting brain of a neurodiverse person. Actually, these were specifically those who were on the spectrum, autism. And they say, there's nothing like, quote unquote, a resting brain of those on the spectrum. Their body could not be moving, but this brain is actually constantly receiving information from their environment. Can you imagine how much processing is happening in this brain? And then we are only complaining because they're not able to give you an eye contact. So what happens is we judge them. What happens sometimes, we even punish them for simply because they're just different, and we don't really put into account what exactly is happening in their brain. It is because of all these things, the statistics that we commonly hear, that people on the spectrum are at risk of mental health issues, psychiatric conditions. It's because, number one, they've never been given a chance to express themselves for who they really are. And so they've been living in this state of constantly suppressing who they really are. So there's another statistic that really, really surprised me. And when you compare those who have received late diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder and those who received early diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, and by late we mean those who are like past teenage, the people who have received diagnosis when they were teenagers and above, as compared to those who received the diagnosis when they were still young children, when it comes to the risk of them developing psychiatric conditions, these are the statistics. Those who receive the diagnosis late are more prone to develop psychiatric conditions, but this does not include schizophrenia and other related conditions. Okay, so things like anxiety disorders, any other behavioral disorders are at a higher risk for those who have received a late diagnosis of ASD. And that proves one thing, that the more we put pressure on these people to behave in a typical world, and while their brain is neurodiverse, we are programming psychiatric conditions in these brains. So there's another term we call adaptive functioning, of which what it means is simply how people just handle life around them. Now, what has been shown is the people who are on the spectrum, especially those who are level 1 or whatever, what we call high functioning, they take so much energy to adapt. As a result, their cognitive ability is never used to the maximum. We've heard of masking, especially in women and even in young girls, because they are not allowed to express. They are not allowed to just say, I cannot function in this meeting. This light is too bright for me. I'm not able to speak and look at you in the eye. I cannot think on my feet right now. I'm not programmed to think on my feet. Okay, now because of all this, they'll just be seated and keeping quiet and trying to adopt so that they're able to go through whatever they need to go through, do not involve their cognition. And so what happens is we start labeling them, we start judging them so harshly because they are not participating as we would want to. They are not outgoing as we would want to. They are not having, this back and forth interaction. They're not chitty-chatting as we'd want to. So what we are doing, us who are in the typical world, is that we are not able to really appreciate the cognitive abilities found in those who are actually level 1 on the spectrum. And that's why we also have the statistics that most of these, actually 8 out of 10 of people who are on the spectrum are not employed. So is there a way that we can be able to adopt some systems? Can we put some other systems that we are able to really be able to appreciate who these people are without really forcing them to fit into this world that we have created? More than half of Gen Zs identify as neurodiverse. And it hit me, especially now that I'm in Kenya. Could this be the reason why we are seeing whatever we are seeing in our generation right now? Could this be the reason why they're actually the active change makers of our world today? And this number has been predicted to get to 58% by 2030. So we should come out and be able to support these people who are in our schools, who are in our workplaces, who are our friends, where we live, so that at the end of the day, no one should feel ashamed simply because they are neurodiverse. Autism is just one of them. The commonest is usually ADHD, dyspraxia, dyslexia, and autism. Those 4. Let us embrace neurodiversity. Let us embrace those who have autism so that we are able to build a world that is actually inclusive. Are you inclusive in your home? Are you inclusive in your thinking? The time is high. And we are going to witness it. We are actually witnessing it in our generation, that there's going to be a time where neurodiversity and neurotypicals are going to be half-half. These are our sons, these are our daughters, these are our brothers, and these are our sisters. Okay? Let us be part of the change. I really hope this helps someone. Until then, God bless you.